Most men think attraction begins when they speak, but the truth is far darker. It begins before the first word is ever said. In that split second before your mouth opens, a woman already knows whether you're a man she'll feel or forget. Because attraction doesn't start in language, it starts in energy. And energy, unlike words, cannot lie. Give me a few minutes, and I'll show you why most men destroy attraction not by what they say, but by the invisible tension they fail to create. There's a reason some men can walk into a room and everything slows down. They don't speak much, yet everyone listens. They don't chase attention, it bends toward them. They command the air without effort. It's not confidence. It's not charm. It's something deeper, presence. Presence is the weapon modern men have lost. In a world addicted to speed, noise, and validation, most men have forgotten how to exist. They perform, they please, they try to sound interesting, and in doing so, they kill the mystery that makes them unforgettable. The seductive man understands something others ignore. Words are tools. But silence is a weapon. Every pause you hold, every look you sustain, every slow inhale before you respond, it builds a kind of pressure no question ever could. That pressure is what makes her heartbeat quicken without knowing why. It's what separates nice conversation from electric connection. You're about to learn the psychology behind that silence. How tension, perception, and controlled mystery turn ordinary talk into hypnotic influence. Because once you master presence, you don't have to chase attraction, you become it. This isn't about picking up lines, it's about primal psychology. You've been lied to. Society tells you to ask questions, to be polite, to seek common ground. But in the ruthless arena of attraction, politeness is poison. Common ground is where desire goes to die. Asking questions is a surrender. It places you in a position of seeking, of needing, of validating. You're essentially saying, please give me information so I can try to impress you. And in that moment you become forgettable. The greatest seducers throughout history understood this. They didn't ask. They stated. They didn't seek approval. They provoked a reaction. Think of the most magnetic figures you know. Do they beg for attention or do they command it with a quiet authority? The problem is, you've been conditioned since childhood to ask permission. To be the nice guy. The one who doesn't ruffle feathers, who doesn't impose. This works in a classroom, maybe even in a corporate meeting. But it's a death sentence in the dance of desire. The opposite sex, especially a high-value woman, doesn't respond to political correctness. They respond to magnetism, to polarity, to social command. And you don't generate magnetism by asking what she does for a living. You generate it by challenging her perception of reality. This is where inference becomes your secret weapon. Instead of asking, you infer. Instead of waiting for data, you offer a bold, insightful observation. Imagine she tells you she works in graphic design. The average man says, "Oh, cool, do you like it?" A dead end. The magnetic man, however, might lean in slightly, a knowing smirk playing on his lips, and say, "You strike me as the kind of person who secretly judges everyone's font choices. Even on restaurant menus, what just happened? You didn't ask for information. You provided an experience. You created a spark. You provoked a visceral reaction." She might laugh, deny, confirm, or even challenge you back. It doesn't matter. You've done what 1,000 questions never could. You've stirred energy. Why does this work? The human brain is hardwired for novelty. We are attracted to the unexpected, to broken patterns. Every beautiful woman has heard the same 12 questions 1,000 times. But an inference? An inference is a surprise. It's a jolt to the system. And surprise is one of the most potent triggers of emotional attention known to man. With each well-placed inference, you demonstrate that you're operating on a different level. You're not just present, you're perceptive. You're looking at her, reading signals, interpreting the unseen. You're not waiting for your turn to speak. You're reacting to the now. This puts you in a state of flow, where the conversation stops being an interview and becomes a dance, a duel, a living work being written together. But let's go deeper. Psychologically, this activates something called projective mirroring. When you launch a bold reading, you're often mirroring something she may never have verbalized, an inner truth she keeps hidden. And when you get it right, the impact is seismic. She feels seen, not for what she says, but for who she is. And that feeling of being understood without having to explain yourself is too rare to ignore. You may not have the strongest physique, the most imposing height, or the largest bank account. But if you're the first man to articulate what she's hiding, you've opened a door most men never even realized existed. This is how men who aren't conventionally attractive can mesmerize inaccessible women. They don't try to prove their worth with a resume. They activate their worth with perception. They turn the tables. They don't ask for permission to join the conversation. They create the conversation. And here's another brutally ignored point. Seduction is emotional entertainment. A woman goes on a date not to answer questions, but to feel alive, surprised, challenged, and connected. If you don't offer that, someone else will. You become replaceable, a walking menu of repetitive questions. And the problem with being generic is that no one feels guilty about forgetting you. But when you enter with inference, with sharp readings, with subtle provocations, with vivid metaphors, with phrases that demand an emotional reaction, you become unforgettable. Because you make an impression, you generate a reaction, you create an experience, and experience is what imprints memories in the unconscious. This leads us to a concept many influencers miss. The power game is won by those who shape perception. Men in general judge more with their eyes than with their hands, for everyone can see but few can touch. In a social context, most people are guided by the superficial. They react to what's visible, language, behavior, energy. If you limit yourself to what's merely said and responded to, you'll be just another person in the crowd trying to make conversation. Here's the uncomfortable, yet liberating truth. You don't need her to like you at first. You need her to feel something. Even if it's confusion, provocation, curiosity, mild discomfort, if you've generated an emotion, you've ignited something, and that something can be cultivated. The worst place to be is neutrality, the one where you were nice and died a nice guy. Inference is your way out of neutrality. It's your first strike in the psychological realm. It's where you begin to manipulate tension, and tension is the oxygen of seduction. Shall we go even further? Every conversation is, in essence, a battle of narrative. You either lead or you are led. You either shape the mood or you enter the mood. You either set the tone or you adapt to whatever comes your way. Seductive men don't just talk. They command atmospheres. They don't react. They shape them. When you grasp this, stopping asking questions stops being a mere technique. It becomes an identity revolution. You're no longer the man who wants to please. You become the man who stirs the air, who transforms silence into delicious tension, who sees the invisible and plays with it. Starting today, you no longer enter a conversation trying to be accepted. You enter testing the waters, creating sparks, generating experiences. What if she reacts negatively? Great. If she backs off, even better. Because this allows you to observe, adjust, and intensify. You don't need approval. You need a playing field. And here's the final key. Stop trying to present yourself. Start revealing yourself little by little, like unfolding a hidden map. Women don't want all the answers. They want the journey, the mystery, the dance between what you let slip and what you keep hidden. And this begins at the first contact. When instead of asking who she is, you suggest, joke, take a chance. You're no longer the guy asking questions. You're the man of presence, of the gaze that reads, the speech that provokes, the energy that commands. Now let's dive into a concept so potent, so overlooked. It will fundamentally change how you interact. The invisible game of tension. How to create impact without saying too much. Understand it this way. Silence, when skillfully managed, speaks louder than any compliment. And in the game of seduction, a man's most common mistake isn't what he says, but the fear he feels of saying nothing. Most men, when talking to a woman they're attracted to, go into a verbal frenzy. A desperate need to fill every second with words, stories, justifications, and of course the old safe questions we already debunked. This fear of emptiness, this panic of silence, transforms the encounter into a desperate monologue for acceptance. And what was supposed to be seduction becomes a performance. And every performance, when forced, reeks of insecurity. But the strategic man, the one who truly understands power, realizes something others ignore. Tension is a more valuable emotional currency than approval. Tension is what's unsaid. It's the space between one word and the next. It's the waiting gaze. It's the pause that weighs heavily. And above all, it's your ability not to rush to fill the void. Tension, in the realm of attraction, works like an invisible rubber band. The more you stretch it, the more energy builds. And the greater the tension, the more explosive the impact when it finally gives way. It's in this charged space that desire is cultivated. Ironically, it's in this very space that most men sabotage themselves. Why? Because we've been conditioned to avoid discomfort. To believe that when a woman confronts us, disagrees, or remains silent, it's a sign of rejection. But what experienced seducers understand is that this discomfort is the fertile ground for power. It is safer to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. At first, this phrase may sound aggressive, even distorted out of context. But let's decode it within the emotional game. Feared here doesn't mean being authoritarian or cruel. It means being respected. It means occupying emotional space, having a presence that demands attention, being the kind of man who doesn't beg for approval, but imposes himself through the magnetism of his conviction. In conversation, this manifests itself like this. She says something provocative, perhaps a test, perhaps a veiled disagreement, and you don't back down. You don't apologize. You don't change your mind to be accepted. You maintain your frame. This is the crux of the invisible game of tension. A woman isn't always seeking agreement. She's seeking resistance. When she disagrees with you, she's testing your frame, testing whether you have your own opinion, testing whether you can maintain emotional control in the face of confrontation. And how you react to this determines whether she sees you as a man or just another man. Herein lies the great contradiction. Attraction doesn't grow in the comfort zone. It's born in the realm of confrontation. If everything you say is met with a passive smile, you're not seducing. You're being ignored. High-value women don't want a mirror. They want a worthy emotional opponent, a man who challenges their certainties, who makes their minds work, who challenges their perceptions. Because a true seducer isn't one who molds himself to her tastes. He's one who expands her world. Imagine the scene. You say something that provokes a slight disagreement. She raises an eyebrow. She says, "Oh, so you're one of those guys who thinks..." The average man panics. He tries to justify himself. No, that's not what I meant. And there he dies, not for making a mistake, but for trying to save himself. The rare man, on the other hand, smiles. He looks into her eyes and says with humor, "Maybe I am, but I bet you haven't decided if that's good or bad yet." He doesn't just sustain the frame. He builds tension. He turns a test into a game, a potential crisis into fuel for attraction. He shows that he's not afraid of discomfort. And because of that, he's desired. This is the power of tension. It separates the boys from the men, the insecure from the magnetic, the eager to please from the provocative. Now, a subtle but crucial point. Don't confuse tension with gratuitous confrontation. Creating tension isn't about being rude or aggressive. It's about being assertive with charm. It's about disagreeing lightly. It's about having a presence that doesn't give in easily, but also doesn't attack. It's about walking the fine line between firmness and fluidity. Tension is about contrast. It's when your quiet energy meets an unexpected provocation. It's when your sweetness mixes with boldness. It's when you compliment with a hint of challenge. Example, instead of saying, "You're beautiful," you say, "You have the kind of beauty that would make a nun question her vocation." You don't just compliment. You create an image. You create tension. You create ambiguity. And ambiguity is golden seduction. Stop and reflect. How many times have you tried to create connection by telling her everything she wanted to hear? And how many times has that led you straight to the dead zone of, "You're nice, but..." Being nice is comfortable, but comfort doesn't create a spark. Being understanding is beautiful, but complete understanding kills the mystery. Tension, in turn, requires you to hold the line, that you hold her gaze when she tests you, that you don't apologize for who you are, that you don't fill every second with words, but let silence do the dirty work. And speaking of silence, that is the seducer's greatest ally. Well-placed silence creates anticipation. It shows that you're comfortable with your own time, that you don't need to fill the void to feel accepted, that you're not afraid of being interpreted. Silence shows power, and power isn't about strength. It's about perception. Whoever masters tension masters perception, and perception is what determines desire. Because women don't want the most logical, the most coherent, or the most predictable. They want what makes them feel, and tension, well managed, makes them feel. Now let's talk about an emotional mechanism few understand: the escalation of emotional tension. Every conversation has a turning point, a moment where you can intensify or dissipate desire, and that moment usually comes after the first challenge, the first discomfort, the first test. If you sustain the tension there, even with humor, with lightness, the attraction curve grows exponentially. You leave the lukewarm territory and enter the real game. The conversation becomes an elegant duel, a ping-pong of glances, laughter, and provocation. Her body language changes. Her gaze shifts. Interest is born. But if you give in at this point, if you try to fix it, soften it, justify it, the tension evaporates. And with it, desire. It is not the most gentle who conquers. It is he who dominates the invisible space between words. Because deep down, what every woman wants to feel is this. This man isn't trying to please me. He's being himself. And yet I'm fascinated. That's real tension. That's power. And that power isn't in the content of what you say. It's in the subtext, in the way you hold your gaze and the pause before you respond, in the smile that hides something unsaid, in the compliment that carries a hint of danger. You're not just a man talking. You're a universe of possibilities, and tension is allowing her to feel this without you having to explain. That's why the game of seduction isn't won by eloquence. It's won by the courage to remain silent, by the ability to disagree with class, by the boldness to provoke and laugh, by the mastery of turning confrontation into dance. And in the end, when she's alone replaying each moment, she won't remember your words. She'll remember the tension, the chills, the doubt, the feeling that there was something there she couldn't decipher. You can have the best script, the perfect line, the perfect timing, but if your presence is shallow, you'll be forgotten. Worse, you'll be ignored before you're even heard. In the game of seduction and social influence, presence isn't a detail. It's the secret weapon that differentiates an ordinary man from a man who magnetizes a room. And the most brutal part, most men today are completely unarmed. We're in an era where bodies are present but souls are not. Men live in zombie mode. Slumped posture, floating gaze, slurred voice, fragmented attention. Even when face-to-face with the woman of their dreams, they're more concerned with performing correctly than with fully existing. And that's precisely why most fail before even the first word. True presence isn't theatricality. It's not forced intensity. It's a kind of emotional gravity. An inner silence that transforms even a simple hello into something you feel. Men who are present don't need to say much because everything they say is charged with intention. And intention, this invisible entity, is what transforms a simple gesture into something sexual. Think of a legendary actor. They didn't need to raise their voice. They didn't need to smile constantly. They were just there, totally, and that made everyone around them respond to their energy. It wasn't constructed charisma. It was embodied charisma. And this kind of presence stems from a deep understanding. You're not trying to win anyone over. You're allowing them to notice you. Look closely at this sentence. Most men enter an interaction trying to prove something. They show off their work, their car, their intelligence, their good humor, as if they were in a perpetual entrance exam for acceptance. But a man who is present doesn't prove. He reveals gradually, paused with subtext, with layers. Because the secret is this. You're not interesting when you strip completely naked in the first minute. You become magnetic when you generate curiosity. When with each word there's a hint that suggests more but doesn't give everything away. It's like a rare perfume. Strong enough to be felt, yet subtle enough to leave doubt in the air. You dominate not by what you offer, but by what you don't immediately deliver. And here comes an essential concept that few discuss. Emotional rhythm. How you manage your own energy determines the impact you have on others. A man who arrives hurried, talkative, trying to impress reveals anxiety. A man who arrives serene, observant, who listens before speaking, who measures each word with the precision of a sculptor, creates presence, creates atmosphere, creates respect. And this cadence isn't just aesthetic, it's neurological. The human brain synchronizes rhythms. When you enter with a more centered energy, you slow down the other person's mind. You create contrast with the hustle and bustle of the external world. You become an emotional oasis, and this, in the world of attraction, is as powerful as beauty or status. Now here's the brutal paradox. The more present you are, the less you have to do. Most men are exhausted because they try so hard to seduce. They talk too much, tell long stories, overcompliment, laugh unintentionally, and gesticulate wildly. But all of this stems from fear. Fear of not being accepted. Fear of not being remembered. The present man, on the other hand, understands that those who are at peace with themselves don't need to be approved by others. They enter a room unhurriedly. They're not anxious to present their best selves, because they already know that simply by being whole, They're rarer than 99% of the men that women met that week. And this brings us to one of the most overlooked, yet profound truths. To everyone's eyes, every man appears what he pretends to be. Few truly know what he is. Presence is exactly that. The art of showing little with great intention. It's knowing that impact isn't in the volume of speech, but in the silence between one sentence and the next. It's understanding that more than being heard, you need to be felt. What prevents most men from achieving this presence? Internal fragmentation. The disconnect between what they think, feel, and do. They're always one foot in fear, the other in expectation, thinking about what she'll think, what they might lose, what they should say. This internal noise prevents energy from flowing, and the woman feels it. She may not even know why, but she feels it. This man isn't here. He's trying to be. The true seducer, on the other hand, is in a state of play. He's not concerned with conquering. He's enjoying provoking. He's not nervous about the reaction. He's curious about the impact. He doesn't seek control. He dances with the chaos of the interaction. And for that, he trains himself. Yes, presence is trained. It's not talent.
It's choice.
It's practice, breathing, attention, posture, intention. Being here now, feeling your own breath, your own body, observing the environment without judgment, allowing the moment to pass through you without rushing to respond. Do you want to be unforgettable? Then listen with your eyes, speak with your body, and silence with intention. When you do this, even your pause becomes art. Your laughter becomes a command. Your gaze becomes a touch. You transcend the conversation and become an experience. And that experience is what she'll tell her friends the next day. He was different. I don't know what it was, but it was intense. That's presence. That's impact. That's what true masters of influence call invisible power. And the best part? Few men will ever have this because it requires inner work. It requires silence with your own demons. It requires giving up the performance habit. And that's scary, but you didn't come this far to be just another one. You came this far because you want to be remembered, not for what you have, but for what you create. And the good news is, when you master presence, you don't have to chase women. You just need to enter the room. The rest will happen. True attraction begins in silence. It grows in tension, and it explodes when you're so present, so comfortable in your own skin that a woman feels, without you even telling her, that she's dealing with someone unlike anything she's ever known. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real, strategically real. If you've made it this far, you're already ahead of 98% of men who continue to live on autopilot. But if you want to go further, if you want direct access to the most forbidden, sharp, and effective strategies of modern seduction, packed into a practical, brutally honest system applicable to any interaction with women, then you need to know what I'm about to reveal to you. The Architect of Desire Blueprint. Triggering attraction in the first 60 seconds isn't just an audiobook. It's a mental boot camp and activation code, an invisible weapon that unlocks conversations, creates instant desire, and transforms you into an architect of emotional impact. Created for men who understand that the game has changed, and who don't have time for superficial theories, this blueprint brings together the most powerful triggers in the psychology of attraction, field-tested techniques, and verbal structures that work in seconds. Inside, you will discover the unspoken command principle, how to command attention without uttering a single word, purely through your presence, the art of hypnotic inferences. Move beyond boring questions and learn to make observations that pierce her superficial persona and connect directly with her hidden desires. The tension weave. Method. Master the subtle art of creating and sustaining emotional tension that makes her heart race, turning casual encounters into unforgettable experiences. Framing reality. Learn to subtly shape the narrative of any interaction, positioning yourself as the prize, the leader, the man she can't quite figure out and therefore can't stop thinking about. The silent seduction technique. Discover how strategic pauses, sustained eye contact, and controlled nonverbal cues can communicate more desire and power than any pickup line. Bypassing her auto-rejection system. Understand why most men get friend-zoned and how to activate her primal attraction triggers that bypass her logical filters. Turning tests into triumphs. Every woman will test you. Learn to not just withstand these tests, but to use them as fuel to escalate attraction. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about unlocking the powerful magnetic man you already are and giving him the tools to effortlessly command desire. The architect of desire blueprint is your unfair advantage. It's the secret language of attraction that only a select few truly understand. It's not for the faint of heart or for those who want to stay nice. It's for men who are ready to stop chasing and start attracting. For men who want to be remembered, desired, and respected. Are you ready to stop being another face in the crowd and become the man who commands the room, simply by existing? Are you ready to transform every interaction into an opportunity for electric connection?